Our topic today that we're presenting is superheroes in society, and our question is, how do superheroes reflect our society today?
So to deal with this question, we'll be looking at four main lenses of superheroes in society. First, I'll take you through the superheroes' history. Natalia will go through superheroes in films. Jonathan will talk about our values today, and Kushi will talk about superheroes' values today. So let's start with history. Superheroes emerged in the 1930s during the Great Depression. And so pay specific attention in all three of these eras to superheroes' challenges and what's going on around them, not just superheroes' values. So in the 1930s, Jerry Robinson, who created the Joker, says the villains of the decade were embezzlers, bank robbers, and hijackers. So this is evident in Action Comics #1, the first Superman issue. This is Superman fighting a wife beater. In the next panel, he tackles a corrupt lobbyist and a senator. And finally, in the scene that appears on the cover, he's fighting a group of kidnappers and small-town thugs. So in the 1930s, the main problem was small-town issues, everyday issues that occurred to everyone in the Great Depression. Bank robberies, corruption, and monetary problems. That changed in World War II. Now superheroes had to confront more grandiose villains, bigger problems, like Hitler and the Japanese. So Captain America was the hero of the decade here. Here's Captain America punching Hitler in his first issue. You can see a U.S. munitions factory being bombed in the background. So this is the kind of grandiose world scenes that we see in the artwork of the 1940s. In the Cold War, we saw a conflict between two different views of America. So first, there's the Iron Man view of America fighting against these loathsome communists who are evil and against the American ideal. So here's Iron Man in Vietnam fighting the Vietnamese. Here, there's more of a conflict here with Iron Man on campus back home in America dealing with student protests. Now, the third and most radical idea that came around in the Cold War was represented by the Hulk. The Hulk fights against the American military. This is his nemesis, General Thunderbolt Ross. And the Hulk fights against General Ross. He fights against the military, and he has this view that America might not be so good as it actually seems.
Okay, so superheroes in the movie industry, so they first began on television serials because people weren't really interested on having them on the big screen until the 1966 Batman movie, which they attempted to put it on the big screen, but it wasn't very successful. So it wasn't until 1977 when the first official superhero movie came out, which was Superman, and that kind of gave rise to the movie industry. And then in the 2000s, we have the movies that helped the industry like explode, which were X-Men and Spider-Man, and then The Dark Knight. And then in 2005, we were introduced to different types of versions of superheroes, like the dark superheroes with the Batman trilogy. Conventions. So usually in the movies, the settings will take place in a city or a place that's crowded with like innocent people, and there's like a threat to the community. When it comes to the characters, you'll have your heroes, your villains, you might have sidekicks, or like a whole super team. And usually the hero will have superpowers. They'll have an identity which is made up of their code name and their suit, which represents them. They'll also have like a pro-social mission, and they'll be selfless and want to help the community. Then plots and themes, you'll see like good versus evil, where they're defeating evil and restoring the community in sacrifice. And then along with conventions, you have iconography, which is like the unmasking and the transformation, and then like display of strength. So it changes over time. So earlier adaptations in the movie industries, they weren't very successful because they were very poorly written and they had poor casting choices, and they didn't really represent the superheroes in the comic books as well as they do today. Casting, they used ordinary men, used bright colors, tight suits, and usually the movies were just about one superhero. But then today we see different types of versions of superheroes. So we see dark superheroes, which was influenced by the Batman model, and then like exciting superheroes, which was based on like Iron Man. And also with like technological advances, the superheroes in the comic books are represented a lot better because of the special effects, and it's more believable. And then there's also more diversity in today's superhero movies.
Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about superhero history and superhero media, I'm now going to tell you a little bit about what we value today. So I'm going to be talking about Generation Z, which is the generation from 1995 to 2012. This is our generation, and it's also the people that are going into the workforce today. So the values of our generation is mainly based on greater acceptance. across the board. So we have greater acceptance in religion. We have seen an increase in Hindus and Muslims in America, which has led to greater tolerance towards them. We have also had greater acceptance of race. Polls conducted by ABC News in the 80s showed only about 52% of people had a friend of a variant race, but today it's like 72%. And we also see greater acceptance of sexuality. A poll done at the University of Chicago showed that in the past, students were less likely to be accepting of their college professors if they weren't straight. But today we see that like most students accept, even if their college professors are gay. We're seeing today that because of the greater acceptance in our society today, superheroes are also having greater diversity. Superheroes are fighting social stigma today instead of a clear villain like Hitler, so it's harder to show that conflict in the comics as easily as it was in the past.
Now that we have talked about our society's values, we are now going to talk about the values of the superheroes. One of the main values is courage. It is shown that all, if not most, if not all superheroes, when they face danger with a brave face, they don't fear that personal harm could occur, and they do everything they can to help out. John Jennings states in his essay, Superheroes by Design, that superheroes are supposed to be strong, brave, and honorable. Another important value is altruism. It is when they portray selfless concern for the others and they help out the civilians without any concern for themselves, which is also. And this is shown in Batman's personal pledge to defend Gotham City and Superman flying around and helping others.
So let's recap. So superheroes today are more a reflection of culture than politics. They're more diverse than like our society, but they're also more fractured like our society. We can see historically that superheroes have had concrete villains to fight against and concrete ideals. Nowadays they don't have those same ideals because they're fighting more fluid concepts like diversity.
Also, nowadays, a lot of people know superheroes through the movies. So superheroes in our society today are more of a form of entertainment rather than like a form of like informing like about politics and historical events.
Also, society values diversity now, which is reflected in the increased diversity in superheroes. And as a result, superheroes mainly only share the generic universal values. And although there are some superheroes that don't follow this general trend.
Okay, that's it.
All right, thank you.